All right, today we are cracking open a criminal dossier on some of history's most notorious and often completely invisible villains. We're talking about the microscopic criminals that have targeted kids for centuries.
Just think about that for a second. What if the culprits behind some of the most devastating crimes, stealing health, well-being, even lives, were completely invisible to the naked eye? Well, that's not some sci-fi plot. Today, we're profiling that exact rogues gallery.
So, our first group of villains is what we're calling the airborne crew. And these guys, they are the absolute hardest to contain because they don't need a getaway car. Nope, they travel on the very air we breathe, turning a simple cough or a sneeze into a weaponized delivery system.
First up on the most wanted list is measles. And really, its nickname says it all. This isn't just some harmless childhood rash. Historically, this was a feared killer, known for its ragingly high fevers and incredibly serious complications.
Now, its partner in airborne crime is varicella, but you probably know it as chickenpox. The nickname Chicken Scratch might sound a whole lot less threatening, but don't let that fool you. This villain has its own dangerous playbook, and it specializes in an attack that is notoriously, maddeningly itchy.
So, how do you tell these two apart in a lineup? Well, it all comes down to their calling cards. Measles, see, it leaves behind these tiny white complex spots inside the mouth before the main rash even shows up. Chickenpox, on the other hand, it goes straight for its signature move, that intensely itchy blister-like rash. But you can't underestimate either of them. Both can lead to really severe complications like pneumonia and even encephalitis, which is a super dangerous inflammation of the brain.
Okay, our next crew is the Droplet Gang, and this is the largest syndicate on our list. Now, they aren't long-range assassins like the airborne crew. These villains, they prefer to work up close and personal, spreading through respiratory droplets when you're in close, face-to-face contact. And the first member of this gang we're going to profile is Diphtheria, a villain with one of the most chillingly accurate nicknames you will ever hear, the Neck Choker. Its method of attack is every bit as sinister as that name implies.
Its unique weapon is the dreaded gray pseudomembrane. This is a thick coating that forms in the back of the throat, and it causes this swollen bull neck look. And just like the name says, it can literally choke a person. But the attack doesn't even stop there. The toxins it pumps out can also cause devastating damage to the heart.
And just so we're crystal clear, a pseudomembrane isn't just some little film. It's a tough, leathery patch of dead tissue and bacteria that grows so thick it physically blocks the airway. This is why that nickname Neck Choker is absolutely no exaggeration.
Next up in the gang is pertussis, and its alias is just brutally direct, the baby killer cough. You probably know it as whooping cough, and this villain is especially dangerous for the most vulnerable people out there, infants.
You know that characteristic whoop sound? It doesn't actually come from the cough itself. It's the sound of someone desperately gasping for air after a long, violent coughing fit. In babies, these fits can be so severe that they just stop breathing. It's a condition called apnea, and it's an absolutely terrifying and life-threatening signature move.
Meet our next threat, HIB, which stands for Haemophilus influenzae type B. Its nickname, the brain and throat killer, tells you everything you need to know about its dual threat capability. This one has two very different but equally deadly game plans.
So HIB follows two potential paths of destruction. Path A, it can invade the lining of the brain and cause meningitis. A little memory trick for that is high brain. Path B, it can cause the epiglottis, that's the little flap in your throat, to swell up so much that it completely blocks the airway. The chilling memory trick for that one? By airway. Two completely devastating outcomes from a single villain.
And believe me, the gang doesn't stop there. We also have mumps, which can lead to deafness. Then you've got rubella, the pregnancy wrecker, which is infamous for causing devastating birth defects. And don't forget influenza, the setup, which weakens the body for a follow-up attack by deadly pneumonia. And finally, there's pneumococcal disease, a true triple threat that can cause pneumonia, meningitis, and blood infections all at once. I mean, this is a truly formidable lineup.
Okay, our final group of villains are the silent saboteurs. Their methods are different. They don't rely on coughs or sneezes. They use these unconventional routes of attack, lurking in the environment or using other ways to get in, and that requires a totally different kind of vigilance.
First up is tetanus, the lockjaw demon. What makes this saboteur so unique is that it doesn't spread from person to person at all. It's an environmental threat. It's an opportunist that just lies in wait in soil and dirt, looking for an entry point, like a deep cut or puncture wound.
Once it's inside, tetanus releases a toxin that causes these horrific muscle spasms. It usually starts with the jaw, that's where lockjaw comes from, but it quickly spreads, making the entire body rigid. Ultimately, these spasms can paralyze the respiratory muscles, and that leads to complete respiratory failure.
Next is a name that once struck fear into the hearts of parents everywhere: polio, the crippler. Its reputation is built on its devastating potential to cause permanent, life-altering damage.
Polio spreads through what's called the fecal-oral route, so through contact with contaminated food, water, or surfaces. And while a lot of infections are actually mild, its most feared outcome is irreversible paralysis. It can attack the nerves that control our muscles, leaving victims unable to walk, and in the worst-case scenarios, unable to even breathe on their own.
And finally, let's look at two saboteurs that both go after the liver: hepatitis A and B. The memory guides are a little blunt, but they are effective. Hepatitis A is transmitted fecal-orally, and it typically causes an acute, severe illness. But hepatitis B, the blood boss, spreads through blood and body fluids and is way more sinister in the long run. It plays the long con, leading to chronic infection, cirrhosis of the liver, and even liver cancer.
So, after reviewing this entire dossier of microscopic villains, you might be wondering what the point is. It's actually pretty simple. Knowing your enemy is the first and honestly the most important line of defense. Understanding how these pathogens operate is an incredibly powerful tool.
What this whole dossier really shows us is that each of these villains has a preferred method of attack, a unique calling card, and a devastating endgame. Understanding their playbook, how they spread, what signs to look for, and what's really at stake is how we arm ourselves with the intelligence we need to recognize and respect the threat they still pose today.
For generations, these microscopic villains wrote a really dark chapter in human history. And while we now have powerful tools to fight them, their playbook, it hasn't changed. They are still out there, just waiting for an opportunity. And that leaves us with a critical question. In our modern era, are we still taking the time to read their playbook and remember the enemy?